Wanted to get your take on the kind of evolution of like mobile technology, things that are happening out there.
Sure. It's hard to throw a dart exactly at the right answer. There's so many interesting new evolutions, trends, trajectories that are going on across the mobile and wireless ecosystem.
Right.
So let me instead focus on a couple of things that I'm seeing more at the workforce level about how mobility is actually shifting and changing.
Oh, that's true.
The future of how we're working.
Yep.
So one of the really interesting things we're seeing, and I know we're all part of, is what I call sort of location-based entrepreneurs, which is the fact that now today there are 15.5 million Americans that are working independently, that are part of this emerging, growing free agent nation.
Yep.
It's been projected that by the end of the decade, in 4 short years, 40% of the American workforce will be working independently. That's 60 million workers.
Wow.
And what's exciting but also promising about that trend is that it's both catalyzed and reliant on mobility and mobile networks, wireless infrastructure, and wireless innovation. Because our ability to actually claim agency and call ourselves free agents makes it can be done, but it requires really robust and really resilient kinds of access to mobile networks that make it all possible. Another thing that's really interesting is the fact that many American corporations are embracing what mobility can bring to responding to the emerging needs of American workers and global workers. So we're seeing so many mainstream large American corporations that are allowing and giving franchise to the idea of remote workers. Companies like Apple and Amazon and IBM and Intuit and so many others have actually at an HR level have said, okay, you know what, it's okay that you can work where you live, you don't have to move, you don't have to contend with the kinds of commutes that become disincentives to type of productivity that we want in the workplace, and work at home.
Right.
Again, the secret sauce to make that happen, in many respects, is mobility.
Right.
And so everything is, in a sense, increasingly is looping back to the promise and potential of mobile networks to make all of this kind of thing happen.
That's really, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's the rise of a like almost nomadic kind of culture, right? Where people can work from anywhere. They don't have to be tied to a city or a desk or a cubicle. And I can totally see that evolving. And it's interesting that you say that these companies are on board. I mean, it's still early, and they're still jumping on pretty quickly. So that's great to hear. All right, so let's talk about the network.
Sure.
We went from,
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now? To then 4G, 3G, 4G, and now we're talking about 5G.
Yes.
What is that, and how does that look, and how is that going to influence how we're building product and things?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we know that here in the United States, we've been so successful in creating the architecture and deploying what we now are all using, which is 4G technology.
Right.
4G LTE.
LTE, yeah.
In fact, it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
The United States has only 5% of the world's population, but 50% of the 4G LTE connections are here in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And even though we have a long runway of making sure that technology continues to be used and deployed, what's really exciting and is going to be a huge, almost paradigmatic shift is that we're emerging to even more evolution in the network to what we're calling 5G, or the 5th generation of network technology.
Yep.
And what 5G is going to bring is pretty astounding. First of all, it's going to allow for download speeds of 10 gigabits per second and up.
Wow.
Just a couple of weeks ago, the 10 gig downloads were demonstrated by Verizon.
Oh, wow.
That means that the HD movie that took us 45 minutes to download last week in a 5G world is going to take 6 seconds.
Right. That's amazing.
Now, beyond that, though, it's also going to create an amazing new phenomenon, which are latency speeds less than a millisecond, faster than the ability of a human being to react. And what's that going to give rise to? All kinds of amazing things.
Right.
From virtual reality, augmented reality, cars that can actually avoid collisions, robotic surgery, all kinds of things are going to be unleashed and enabled that will have really profound public good, including also disaster response.
Oh, wow.
So really, really excited about that. The last thing I'll just say this about 5G is that, we all have said a lot of things about what we call the Internet of Things.
Right.
Well, 5G is going to be the engine, in many respects, of the Internet of Things. It's going to enable dense networks that are going to have up to 1 million wireless sensors per square kilometer.
That's amazing.
And when you have so many wireless sensors talking to each other, unimaginable innovation can happen and will happen. Not only as consumers, but also at an industrial level. So it's really exciting.
I mean, that is the internet. I mean, that is the Internet of Things, that connectivity. That's amazing. Wow. So how far off are we from that? I mean, you said they just showed it off last week. What's
there's a lot of really exciting R&D that's being going on by companies like Verizon and AT&T and Cisco and Qualcomm and Samsung and many others, really pushing to see first commercial deployment, we hope, by the end of the decade.
Wow.
There's a large ramp up. It's going to require a lot of work, a lot of investment.
Yeah.
But it's a global race, and all of the other countries are right in that race, and we have the opportunity to, as we have with 4G, to continue to lead the global race to evolve towards the next generation of networks. Really cool.
Great. No, that's awesome. So, okay, another thing that Mobile Future does, you guys do your own competition around mobile technology, and it's called the Moblies.
Yep.
And you guys are out looking for companies that make a difference in the world. And I just wanted to get your take on, can you give us some kind of examples or some sense of like some of the biggest social issues that these apps or products are taking care of?
I don't think we have to come to South by Southwest to know that the mobile revolution really hasn't been about just about how much candy we can crush or subways we can serve.
Right.
It's been about how we can actually make our society, our communities, our lives, our schools, our hospitals, our government perform better, be more responsive, and actually yield real public benefit. And so we at Mobile Future decided to actually have a national award that honors innovation that's really focused on really cool technologies in the mobile space and services that are actually making a difference in our lives and our communities and for our families. And we've seen unbelievable innovation for committed entrepreneurs putting their shoulders to things in education. For example, a Mobley's winner, Learn with Homer, it's still a partner of ours, really thinking about mobile applications for kids. Firemen in Kansas that have been deploying mobile technology to allow for volunteer firemen to alert each other more quickly so that they can be more responsive to emergencies in Kansas, and they're scaling up nationally. We have we just gave one of our awards to a wonderful company whose CEO is just here today.
Oh, good.
Called Food Share, which is kind of a feed it forward model, a mobile platform that allows you to actually buy a meal that would go to a food bank every time you go out to a restaurant.
That's cool.
Really, really cool.
Really nice. Yeah.
So, and there's also another wonderful company who shows the diversity of social impact innovation, a company called Sprocket in San Francisco near where I live, that is all about using mobile platforms to help parolees engage with and stay connected to their parole officers to reduce recidivism rate, dealing with a really massive national challenge we've had in our country called mass incarceration.
Okay.
So we've seen just sparks of innovation and commitment and really absorbing kinds of technologies in the mobile space, really having public value. It's so exciting and humbling to see.
Yeah, it's all across the board, sounds like, too, different types of innovation. Speaking of innovation, you mentioned you flew in with Air Force One, and the president was here. First time that a president has spoken at a South by Southwest in their 30 years of Interactive and whatnot. What does that mean? What's that signify as far as what we're doing here as a nation and an economy, and how does this look for entrepreneurs out there?
Well, I think that two things are important to know. One is when a president decides to go and spend time at an event, at a civic gathering, it really confers to that gathering, not only importance, but also, suggests that what's going on there is really important in our national life.
Right.
So it's a real great thing that South by Southwest had the time of our nation's president to hear and learn what's going on in the innovation community, but also to share with us what our federal government has been trying to do to lean in and making our government more responsive using the technologies and the innovations that we here are actually deploying and producing. So that's great. I think that at the end of the day, when we can better connect what's going on at the grassroots of American innovation in the kinds of cool things that we're building and developing in our living rooms and in our garages with policymakers is a good thing. Because as we all know, policymakers move a lot more slowly than we in innovation land. And anytime we can help them understand what we're doing and give them a little more giddy up, then, well, good things will happen.
Good.
And so fantastic that the president was able to come. Fantastic that he's not only sort of shared his thinking, but he was able to do some learning about what we're doing to inform him and his team for actually moving even quicker. And
that's
modeling what we try to do.
No, that's great. And I was excited to see that he was here. I tried to get around the city yesterday. Not a good idea.
No, we did a lot of circling.
They shut down everything. It was crazy. I'm sure, circling from above, so that's the only downside, I guess, from that perspective. But it's pretty cool that he came out. Okay, so you also we just wrapping up some sessions here, some mentoring sessions that we've done. This is our second year of doing it here. We had some great folks come out to share their experiences and insights. I'm curious on your perspective on. You talked to a lot of different entrepreneurs. What are some of the things that you share with them as far as advice goes, like? For any of the hustlers out there trying to create a new thing, what is the big, kind of, how do you take an idea and turn it into something here?
It's a great question, and if there's any common core to what makes an entrepreneur get up every morning and go passionately against the hugest odds possible, to continue to try every day to build a product, make something happen, deliver it to a marketplace. It takes a very, very different and special mentality. It takes a very different psychology. It takes a very serious amount of commitment and passion. We all know that. And that is so represented by all of the folks that come to Austin to share ideas and to share learning and to get inspiration. Having been a CEO of a few internet companies here and in Europe, I would say that the one defining feature that any entrepreneur has, common to all of them, is, and regardless of what language they speak, is they have no ability to comprehend the word no. The word no does not exist. It's a word that an entrepreneur hears 1,000 times a day. No, I'm not going to invest in you. No, I'm not going to be able to deliver the code in time. No, I don't want to have a meeting with you. But every single successful entrepreneur I've ever met has a linguistic filter against that word. It comes back every day until they get to yes. And it's a remarkable talent. It's one that is both you're born with, but you can acquire. And there's a lot of solidarity that is required for to be able to be an entrepreneur and know that everybody else as an entrepreneur has to deal constantly with failure before success happens.
So that persistence is super important. And knowing how to persist, and not be aggressive or whatever, but managing that and being understanding how to do that. That's a great point.
And being cheerful.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so final question, really, unless you had something else you want to chat about, was really about you.
Let's talk about Isla.
Yeah, right. No,
what
I heard
diapers?
She's screaming back there. So wanted to ask you more about why you do this. Why do you do Mobile Future? Why? What is it that drives you every day? Because you talked about making sure there's a drive there and everything. We all know that drive, getting out of the bed every day, and just curious, what is this drives you?
When I and a couple of other colleagues had the idea to launch Mobile Future, when we created Mobile Future, we had all come from experiences of being in the business world, building businesses where we were running up against the brick wall and banging our heads against that wall of government regulation, government policy frameworks that either didn't make sense or by their structure just slowed us down and make us spend a lot of money handling those regulatory challenges instead of being able to focus on building our business, getting our products to market. And it occurred to us that there was a huge number of colleagues in the emerging mobile and wireless space who were earlier in their development, hadn't really understood what kinds of policy issues that they're going to be contending with as entrepreneurs. In addition to even larger companies that were coming into a whole new world, a whole new set of issues in the mobile and wireless space, which has now become such a central part of our lives, that if we could create a new platform for educating our friends in the policy community in Washington and our state houses around the country about what we as innovators and entrepreneurs are doing in companies large and small, and also learn from them what they're thinking, that would actually have a public benefit. And maybe even better policy, more wiser and progressive policy, more restrained policy based on humility can emerge that would actually accelerate and not slow down the mobile revolution. And I think in the few years that we've been at this, we've been actually able to make a difference and have a voice that represents a much broader community of innovators that our policymakers haven't heard from before. And we're going to stay at it because there's a long way to go in this wonderful mobile journey that we're all on.